Hi, everybody. Welcome. We have some more people coming today, so we'll give everybody a couple minutes, see who else we get. But as you arrive, we'd love to hear these from you and to hear these things about you in the chat. Hi, everybody. Welcome. We're really glad that you're here today. I know that some of you have put this information in the chat. If you have not, we would love to hear from you, just so that we have a sense of who's here and the work that you're doing and why you are here today. So we are first going to start with a moment of silence. So as Mentor New York, our services span the entire state. And we are incredibly saddened and angered by the shooting in Buffalo on Saturday. So we want to take a moment of silence just before we begin. So let's just take a moment now. Okay, thank you. All right, so a little bit about me. I am moving you over here a little bit. So I worked at Big Brothers Big Sisters for 7 years in Philadelphia. And then I have worked as an administrator and adjunct faculty in higher ed. I've been teaching for 10 to 15 years now. So I consulted with Mentor New York for a few years, and I'll explain what I did later in the training, and recently started full-time. So I'm very thrilled to be on the team. We're really small but mighty, and we care deeply about expanding and improving mentoring programs for youth across the state. So just to give you a sense of what we will do today, so I'll give you some more info about about Mentor New York. We will do a little bit of community building. So we've all come to use Zoom and get used to it and multitask during trainings like this. So I'm very much hoping that you can get your cameras on. So it feels like there's a lot of us here in the training. And part of the work that we do at Mentor New York is to build community. And so part of our time that's together will be interactive so that you can start to build community with each other. So while I very much hope that you are on camera, we also know that everybody has different technology restraints. So if you can't be, we understand that, but we'd love for you to participate either in the chat or by unmuting yourself as well. So we will start off with strengths-based mentoring, which kind of flips the way that mentoring has traditionally been thought of. And then we'll get into critical mentoring, which is mentoring in a way so that youth have a voice and they have legitimate power in the creation of programs that serve both themselves and their communities. And then we'll do some individual reflection as we get into cultural humility, which is the continuous process of learning about different cultures, practices, and values. I think that sometimes there's an idea that we'll hit a finite point of knowledge about cultures and values and that kind of thing, but it's just not the case. So cultural humility grounds us in knowing that we will always be learning about these things. And then we'll talk about developmental relationships and how, which is an organization called the Search Institute. And these are their 5 different areas that are important to the development of a young person. And so then we will think about how we can apply what we learned through strengths-based mentoring, critical mentoring, and cultural humility to the relationships of young people in your organization. So before I go further with that, does anybody have questions about any of that? Cool.
Yeah, because I
Okay. So we'll move on to info about us. So Mentor New York, if you are not familiar with us, we've been around for 29 years. Our 30th year will be next year, which is exciting. And we support existing youth mentoring programs. We help to start new ones, and we work to infuse cultures of mentoring in schools, companies, and different organizations. So we obviously provide trainings. We provide network opportunities, which I'll tell you about at the end of the training. We have an annual conference. We offer individual consultation and a lot of other things that I'll explain in detail at the end of our session. So Mentor New York is a part of Mentor National. So Mentor New York is an affiliate of Mentor National. So you can take a look on this map. And so the green states are those that have a current Mentor affiliate, and these blue states are getting going with an affiliate. So because we are a part of a national organization, we have access to a lot of different resources, including very high quality research and high quality best practices that we incorporate to a lot of the work that we do. So as I said, we will have you interact. And so we're going to start to build some community right now through some reflection. So as we are talking about mentoring today, we'll break you up into small groups just to spend 5 minutes. We want you to think about an adult or mentor who made an impact on your life. So this could have been a teacher, a coach, community member, anybody who is an adult who made an impact on your life. Now, what characteristics did that person have that made them particularly effective or helpful? What unique qualities did you appreciate about them? And what qualities about you did they make you aware of? And then what did you appreciate about them? So, all right. So Joey, my coworker, is going to split you all up into small groups to talk for 5 minutes about this. So Kim, Julianne, and Monique, if you could join your groups, that would be great. Thank you. Joey, I'm going to stop sharing for 1 second. I want to make sure I did this correctly with the video.
No problem.
I did not. Okay.
Erica, there is something blocking your screen at the moment. I don't know what that is, like a gray square.
Oh, hold on 1 second. Strange. Okay.
That's good now.
Oh, okay. I don't know what it was. Okay. So I hope that those conversations were good and made you smile. Was there anything in particular that came up in any of your groups that somebody would like to share? Or can tell us, actually, can somebody tell us about a mentor that you had when you were younger? If you'd like to share, you can just come off of mute for us. All right. So if nobody wants to share, I'll share about mine. So I actually, I guess I think of her as my mentor when I was in college. She was my first supervisor and my first ever professional supervisor. And she always, even though she was my boss, she always looked out for me and she was helpful to me. She was very interested in my growth and teaching me. And then she also would point out things about myself that I didn't know at that point. And that I still, you know, I have come to learn those things, but she knew them way earlier than I did. And so I still think of her as a mentor when I am working on presentations and different things for work for Mentor New York. I think of her all the time. So she absolutely influenced my life in a positive way. So, and continues to. So I hope that you had a good discussion about that and about people in your life who influenced you positively. So. Okay. And so we start talking about that because obviously we all are involved in mentoring work in one way or another. So bringing it back to ourselves is a good way to start it. So, and all of you are here, right? All of you are here because you work with youth in one way or another, but you're doing that in different ways. And so we want to make sure that that today is relevant to all of you. And so for those of you who are running a youth mentoring program, we hope that today can impact your systemic approach to cultural humility. For those of you who are mentors, we hope that today will influence your mindset in consideration of cultural humility in support of the young person or young people that you work with. And for those of you who work with young people and are focused on incorporating a mentoring mindset into your work, we hope that we want you to leave with tangible tools and frameworks to incorporate into your work. So we're going to get started with a strengths-based approach. And how many of you, can you just raise your hands? How many of you have thought of or still think of mentoring as something that we do to like fix a young person or to go in and kind of like swoop in and help them? Or have you once thought of it in that way? Yes. Yes. Some people said yes. And I did as well. It was kind of a traditional view of mentoring, but it just doesn't fully serve the young people that we work with. So a strengths-based approach to mentoring, it flips the traditional model. So think about if somebody were to mentor you and they started with a deficit approach. So what would they know about you? So if somebody were to come in, not my mentor, Sharon, somebody else were to come in and with a deficit approach of me, they'd probably know that I can get pretty anxious. I don't multitask very well at all. I think that shows my age too. And sometimes I say yes to too many things at once. So if somebody is coming in and that is what they know of me, right? They know like these deficits, they're going to come in and try to fix me because that's what they know of me. And do I need to be fixed? Sure, we all do. But just focusing on my shortcomings also isn't getting a full view of me. And so that's how it is when we approach our mentees with a deficit view. We don't see them as whole people. We see them as a project or something that needs to be fixed. And so flipping this traditional model is so important. So let's start thinking about our mentees in terms of their strengths, okay? And so a kind of a traditional model of this as well is that the mentor was central. And so like the mentor was guiding this relationship. But again, we want to flip that as well, that the mentee is central to the mentoring relationship and the mentor is is kind of along for the ride, but we're building based off of the mentee, not on the mentor's goals. And so when we think about the young people that we work with, we want to keep in mind their personal strengths and the strengths of their community that is around them. And how do their strengths impact their lives, those close to them and their communities? So we're taking full stock of their lives in all areas of their lives and seeing the strengths there. And then the mentors that work with them help to build on these strengths. Can you raise your hand if you're familiar with critical mentoring? Some people, some, okay. Okay. So just like with strengths-based mentoring, which is that is youth-centric and we're focused on the mentee, critical mentoring is as well. Okay, so organizations and mentors focus on work that creates a voice for youth, it gives power to youth, and provides choice for youth. So this is not driven by the adults. This is driven that what happens in the organization, what happens in the relationships is driven by the youth. So we are going to watch a short clip of Dr. Tori Wieston-Surden, who created critical mentoring. She's amazing. She has a book and we will send info about that to you later this week, but we're just going to watch a short clip of her explaining critical mentoring.
Critical mentoring essentially says that if young people's contexts were water and air, they'd be toxic, impossible to drink, impossible to breathe. Mentoring must move to clear the water and purify the air. It is not about using mentoring to manage symptoms. It's about leveraging mentoring to address root causes. When we are engaged in youth mentoring, we are often asking young people to fix themselves. And we do that when we know full well that their contexts are toxic. Why do we ask Black youth, for example, to pull up their pants and appear more respectable when we know that Black men in suits are harassed? Why do we ask marginalized youth to engage in schools when we know that schools are often sites of trauma for young people? So critical mentoring asks mentors to consider the context that youth exist in, and to then alter their mentoring praxis to help young people to address these issues. Critical mentoring is also about being youth-centric. Now, this is not separate or neatly divorced from the idea of critically considering context. In fact, if you are a youth mentor who's working with a marginalized young person, it's your responsibility to ensure that young people who are typically without voice, power, and choice have voice, power, and choice. There are 4 elements that are involved in being youth-centric. And typically my youth co-facilitators give this slide, so I give them full credit for all of these points. Those 4 elements are recognizing that youth are capable, providing youth with a platform, passing the mic, and letting youth lead. Recognizing that youth are capable is about combating our adultism. Adultism that says that young people shouldn't have opinions and that they're not ready to lead in this way. Providing a platform is about ensuring that young people have space and place to innovate and partner with us in this work. Passing the mic is exactly that. There's a saying that you don't need to be a voice for the voiceless, just pass the mic. In the same way, we should not always have to speak on behalf of young people. We should just give them opportunities to speak for themselves. And finally, we need to let young people lead. And they should be leading in various ways. They should be running our programs. They should be running this event. They should be prepared and poised to take over our positions when we move on. And young people are more than capable. They can do it. Angela Davis said that young people should be able to see further since they are standing on our shoulders.
Okay. So a little bit more about critical mentoring. As I say, she has great, her book is great. It's great info. So I'll just talk about it a little bit more. And then if you want to spend more time on it, we definitely encourage you to. So for critical mentoring, we are focusing on the youth and their experiences. Right? So we are considering their race, ethnicity, class, gender, sexuality, anything else that matters to them in their identity. We are considering that in the design of our programs and mentoring relationships. We're not pretending that marginalization doesn't exist with critical mentoring. We place it front and center. And we are recognizing that youth are capable and that they are leaders. And then by doing this, we can help them to thrive in the face of adverse circumstances. And we can help them to be advocates. And so to do this work well, mentors, mentees, and programs have to develop a critical lens and come to understand the ways that systemic oppression can be experienced socially, politically, and economically. So, and allow space to learn about, discuss, reflect on, and challenge systems of inequality. And so to do this work, if there are any of you here that grew up unaware of your privilege, as I did, we have to be humble and we have to acknowledge that there is so much to learn. We have to do a ton of research on it, put ourselves in situations to learn, ask questions. And then if we misspeak on something, that we take responsibility for that and we learn from it and then move forward. So cultural humility, as I said in the beginning, there's, sometimes people, cultural competence is can imply that there's a finite amount of knowledge to have. And once we have that, then we're set and we're good at this. But cultural humility implies that tells us that it is a lifelong process of reflecting and learning about how social identity and experiences are shaped by systems of oppression, power, and privilege. Oops, I jumped too fast, sorry. And so for this, there are 3 different parts of cultural humility. There's a commitment to self-reflection, to continuous learning, and critiquing and reflecting on the power imbalance between young people, so mentees and mentors, or people in authority positions. Cultural humility is not mastery of knowledge or an endpoint in learning, or thinking of somebody only in terms of their racial or ethnic identity and missing all other aspects, which could be gender, religion, class, sexual orientation. Cultural humility is not colorblindness. And it is not considering and acknowledging racism only when there are publicized racist events, as there was on Saturday. So in terms of self-reflection, it's a very important part of cultural humility. We want you to commit to ongoing self-reflection and learning about yourself, your own social identity and experiences, and critiquing and exploring the ways that you define yourself and what those identities mean in the context of power structures in the United States. So we're going to take a few minutes for a social identity wheel. Some of you may have done this in the past. I think it's always a good exercise, even if you have. So spend a few minutes thinking about these different ways, these different identities, and then answer these questions. So what are the identities that you think about most often, that you don't really think about? What are some of your identities you would like to learn more about, that have the strongest effect on you, and what are your identities that might have the greatest effect on how others perceive you? Okay, so let's take a few minutes just to think about this, to practice this self-reflection that's important with cultural humility.
I think I saw her fiance yesterday.
Okay, so could you, let's see, put an identity in the chat that you think about most often. Can you just pick one identity that you have that you think about often? Yeah, so a lot of age, genders. Yeah, age and gender. I think of more as I get older, I think more about age. I didn't think about it so much when I was younger, but I think about it more now than I did before. Yes, race, age, gender, race, age. So a mix of race, age, and gender. Great, thank you. Thanks for sharing. So as we continue on thinking about self-reflection for cultural humility, there's some questions to consider. So how do your social identities shape your worldview and experiences? And what are some of your identities that might be meaningful to your mentee? Or what are some identities that the mentors in your organization have that would be most meaningful to the young people in your organizations? Also with self-reflections, it is important to be aware of your initial reactions to your mentee, especially if they're culturally different from you. Or what assumptions might you have about your mentee and their life? Likewise, what assumptions might they have about you and your life before they get to know you? Okay. So then the second part of cultural humility, as soon as the slide will move, is learning. Okay. And so you're always a learner in your relationship, right? This is a key part of cultural humility. And part of this is getting comfortable with that you're never going to be able to learn everything that there is to know about your mentees' cultural groups, but you can try, and you can try to get insight into it. So you can do this by learning about their cultural group and experiences in different ways: books, movies, TV programs, podcasts. Spend time in their community. Read about the history of your mentees' community in neighborhood newspapers to learn about their surroundings. So I have tutored and taught ESL previously. And so when I just was getting started, I was living in Philly and I was tutoring a Buddhist monk. And he was wonderful. And he talked a lot about his temple and his neighborhood. And he talked about how uncomfortable he was in his neighborhood. And so I'm an empathetic human, as many of us are, or all of us are on this training. And so I could get a sense of these things as he was talking about them. But it wasn't until he invited me to go to a celebration at his temple that I more fully understood what he was talking about. And I understood the level of responsibility that he had at his temple. I also got to see his neighborhood firsthand, and I could experience his discomfort in the neighborhood in a different way because I saw him in it, and I could see, exactly how that made him feel. So, being in this situation going into the environment can impact us in ways that we might not have anticipated. So in terms of learning, you want to ask questions and learn about your mentees' social identities, how systems of oppression and privilege have shaped their experiences. Also keep in mind those things about yourself. Remain curious about the young people that you're working with, their culture while you're working with them. And even if you and your mentee are similar in a social identity or two, stay open to the idea that your life experiences are different because of the many different identities that make your life unique. It sometimes can happen that you think that because someone has had similar or has similar identities to you, that you might think that all of their experiences are the same, and that just definitely isn't the case. So some questions to consider in terms of learning with mentees, or incorporating learning into your organization? What are social identities of people involved in your organization? Which social identities are most meaningful or important to them? What are the cultural values of the mentees, families, young people involved in your organization? And how have systems of privilege and oppression shaped both the young people in your organization and the staff of your organization? And what's the history of the local community where your organization might be? Okay. So another part of cultural humility, this third part that we'll talk about today, is the power differential. So there's a power differential just inherent in mentor-mentee relationships, and supervisor and staff relationships. It's just inherent. And so it's important to understand this and to acknowledge it. So acknowledge the power differential in your own self-reflection. And how might that differential impact your mentoring relationships? There's some cultures where young people might not speak up the same as young people in different cultures would. And so is that something that you have to keep in mind in the training of your volunteers or the training of your mentors? Something also to consider here, which again, if you're coming in as the authority figure here, is to really understand that your mentee is the expert in their own life. It could be tempting to tell them what they should do exactly, or lead them heavily to what you think they should do. But that's not what we're there for as mentors. We're there to help them to learn to be experts, to come to be confident in their lives, to honor their voice and their experiences. Okay. Any questions about these three aspects of cultural humility that we discussed? Self-reflection, learning, and power differential.
I do have a question.
Great.
So just thinking about in terms of power differentials, like I'm the program coordinator for a nonprofit. I work with students in 3 local high schools, lots of different backgrounds. And like I was thinking even doing the social identity wheel during a workshop with them might be enlightening and interesting, but I'm aware of a power differential of me coming in and talking with them about that. And just, I guess, is there a way to approach these conversations with mentees, with students? Do you have recommendations specifically for, coming in and making it so that there's less of a power differential if you want to start these conversations? Sure.
The first thing that comes to mind is, can you have one of the young people in your organization lead it? I guess I'm thinking specifically of the wheel just because that's what you brought up.
Yeah, I could see about it. And it's funny, I just read the whole critical mentoring book. It never occurred to me to see if we could do that. And now I'm like, that's so I could think about ways. I'm not sure, honestly, but I could at least ask. That's not something I've ever thought of before, but great suggestion.
Yeah. And, even if it's not for the wheel, if it's for different exercises that you do, or for even different parts of meetings or things that you have, it could be really interesting. And it's also, it's a cool way to empower the young people, to show them, to give them trust, but then also to shift that power differential around. Yeah. So absolutely. Thank you. I think also what helps with it, Kelsey, is to acknowledge it. If you're to say, like, it's clear that I'm older than you all, like to kind of acknowledge it can help it as well. And then maybe if you break up into small groups, if it works for you, if you're able to sit in with a group or kind of move around and sit in with the groups, if you don't do that already, it can make them feel more comfortable with you, that you're not like, watching what's going on, but that you're one of them and sitting with them. So awesome. All right. Well, thank you. Yeah. All right. Any other questions about that? Okay, so moving on to developmental relationships. So this was a framework that I will show you in 1 minute that was created by the Search Institute. And so the Search Institute did a lot of research and talked with a lot of young people. And through developmental relationships, young people are able to discover who they are, cultivate the abilities needed for them to shape their own lives, and learn how to engage with and contribute to the world around them. So there are five aspects of these relationships. So we express care, provide support, challenge growth. This is what mentors do. Mentors share power, just like you said, Kelsey. And then we help to expand the possibilities for youth in our programs. Okay. So how do we ensure, how do we ensure that we do these things? What could we do? So if we're expressing care, you know, we're sitting with somebody, we're letting, if we have a mentee and they have a big test coming up, we're checking in with them to make sure that they know that we're thinking about them. So there's different ways that we can do this. But how, if you think about it, you know, we've talked about cultural humility, we've talked about critical mentoring. If we consider these 5 very important keys to developing relationships, how can you incorporate cultural humility or critical mentoring into your program through one of these?
I mean, I would say listening and just, giving them a voice, listening to their fears and their anxieties.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and acknowledging them. Absolutely. Thanks, Laura. Kelsey, did you unmute?
I can. Yeah, I was thinking it just in my own, experience with this organization over the past year, in terms of expanding possibilities, I think that's an interesting one because sometimes I think mentors come into our program, and even I came into it thinking, you're going to expose the young person to all kinds of new activities, all kinds of new cultural experiences. Sometimes it's coming from a kind of saviorish place of like, their is not good enough. So sometimes expanding possibilities, I think that the powerful way to do it in a critical mentoring framework is to ask what kind of possibilities they would like to, explore,
Awesome.
and
Yes.
bring them into the process early on.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else, or you can text it in the chat. How could you incorporate cultural humility or critical mentoring into one of these aspects of a developmental relationship?
I'll add just on Kelsey's point too, the idea that that by expanding, we think a lot about expanding possibilities as opening these webs or networks, of social capital for our young people. So the more people the mentors we're introducing them to, and then the possibilities and opportunities that those mentors can lead to. So that's expanding possibilities. And a lot of times the way our social identities, our cultural identities can box us in, that just by expanding possibilities, just by doing the active mentoring and connecting these young people, we're doing that work outside of those concrete lines.
Mm-hmm.
Could that also apply to the share power?
Yes.
I mean, introducing them to new opportunities and to people, expanding their network.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely. But then I think balancing that out too with their experiences, right? So like expanding the network, but then also not losing track of their experiences too. So, yes.
Another thought I had as far as sharing power is letting the mentee teach you. So letting them share their culture, their experiences, I think, the more times you put the mentee in the driver's seat to let them share their world, that can also be very empowering for them as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And shows that you value them and you appreciate it and it matters to you. Yep, absolutely. Are there ways that we could challenge growth, keeping in mind cultural humility or critical mentoring? So I think of this in terms of their strengths. So we talk about strengths-based mentoring, that we're paying attention to their strengths. We're not coming in with a deficit view. So if we're challenging growth, then we're challenging growth in the way that they want to grow, not the way that we think they need to, or in the ways that we think they would benefit from. So that's a way that we could do that in that way for sure.
So I was thinking in terms of that, maybe asking them to identify a stretch goal.
Mhm.
Would that be appropriate?
Sure.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely.
Or even just being transparent about the fact that you're on a continuous journey, as we talked about, through learning about cultural humility. And so it sort of, if you're partnering with them in that work, it's sort of challenging them to be on that continuous journey too, and modeling that for them.
Yeah, great idea. All right, so we are going to move on and give you a little bit more info about us at Mentor New York. So at Mentor New York, we have a racial equity framework, and so we will send you a lot of information about that. Joey, can you talk about the DEI project? You're going to speak better about it than I will.
Sure. So we have a racial equity framework on our website that you can visit, and we'll share the link in the post email. But we're also in the process of developing a action-oriented click-through toolkit for programs and program leaders and mentors to implement actionable tools towards increasing racial equity within your programs. So that's something to look out for towards the end of this year and into 2023. But the framework itself already on our website will give you a lot of information and context, and you can always reach out to us if you have more questions or interest in that.
Thank you. So we have a New York mentoring network, which Joey has gotten up and running. And so the purpose of this is to create community among mentoring professionals. As a member of our network, you can have access to training. We have different networking events. And so it's just a nice way to have community among other people who are doing the same work across the state. So that is another option for you to join our mentoring hub. At Mentor New York, we have webinars as well. Obviously, we have a lot of different webinars that you have access to all the time. So if any of you are working in a corporate environment, we also think of mentoring in a corporate environment in terms of interns. We consider interns under 27 still young people. And so we partner with some companies to take a program called Connect, Focus, Grow. And do that to ensure that internship programs are running with a mentoring mindset, and so that the young people in those programs are getting the most out of it that they can. So then as we shift more to Mentor National, there is a nationwide database of youth mentoring organizations called Mentoring Connector. And as I mentioned, our national organization has a ton of great research that helps to inform best practices. And so I would say like the biggest one is elements of effective practice. And so you can access this. And again, we can send this info to you. And Mentor National has a lot of different trainings and resources available to everybody as well. So through the National Mentoring Resource, or I'm sorry, through Mentor National, and the National Mentoring Resource Center, organizations can apply to get free, and I'm going to switch this, sorry, to get free guidance and consultation. And so you apply for this, you tell us what your needs are, and then one of us at Mentor New York works with you to address these needs that you have in your organization. And so it's a great way to get targeted, very personalized help with your organization and whatever it is that you need. So we can help you to develop a handbook that you might need. We also could work with you to incorporate cultural humility practices more for your specific population that you serve and everybody. So, you know, there's a lot of different things that we can do with that. So definitely keep that in mind. So thank you for joining us today. We are on Friday. We are having a coffee hour, which is peer learning and resources around making room for fun and play. And then we will send you further resources on cultural humility in a few days. There's a ton of stuff out there. And so we will send some things that we think will be helpful for you. And if you have any questions, or if there's any way that we can support your organization with anything that we talked about today or anything else that you can think of, just please let us know. So does anybody have questions that we can answer for you? All right, so we will be here. If you do have questions, Joey and I will stay on, and we are happy to answer those. Otherwise, thanks so much for joining us today. And like I said, we'll follow up with an email in a few days. Okay, have a great day, everybody. Thanks for coming.